Thank you. Welcome everyone to tonight's debate. Pretty topical one, as I can see by numbers this evening. It is "This House regrets deposing Boris Johnson as Prime Minister." So, thanks very much for being here. And before we get started, does any council members have any council announcements to make? You're not a council member. Any council announcements? Yes. State your name as well, please.
Ellie Byrne. I'm the interim convener. I organise the debates and I convince you all to speak. On that note, the next 2 weeks are filled. Thanks, guys. However, I've run into this issue a few times. You need to have me on Messenger because we speaker group chats to confirm that you're speaking and all this stuff. So for the people speaking at next week's debate, Theo Burton, Owen Miller, Will Poland, Jake Kieran, Dermot Hamill and Owen Usher, add me on bloody Messenger. Please do not make my job worse and start emailing your shitty emails. Please just add me on Messenger so I can all communicate with you. Thank you so much.
Just because I'm debating a lot, can I say if anyone wants my slot on that? Put it out there if anyone wants it.
Alright, there is now a space going on next week's debate. If you want it, you can have it. I'm leaving the bar at 9:30, so find me by then. I know I just named all names. I wasn't gonna chill out.
No, I'm not. I'm not too
Also, I will harass you, Kieran, so we'll be grand.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else got any announcements then? Yes. State your name as well, please.
Ryan Hoey. Right, so last week's debate obviously announced the Stormont Mixer, which is when we all go to Stormont and have a tour of Stormont and then have a debate in the Senate chamber, and that is on Tuesday. And yeah, you need to sign the form that's on our Instagram story to be able to attend. The Stormont events team requires a list of people who are coming. And the speakers who are going to be speaking on the debate, which is on the Northern Ireland Protocol, are on the proposition we have Jim Alistair for the TUV, Robbie Butler for the UUP, and possibly Diane Dodds, although she needs to call me back to confirm that. And then on the opposition we have Matthew O'Toole for the SDLP,
Kate Nicholl for
Alliance, and then Sinn Féin have told us they're not sending anyone, so I think that requires a shame or a boo. But instead we're going to have Emma D'Souza, who's the sort of, rights activist or journalist or whatever. And then, so that's the Stormont Mixer, and then the week after that we have the Halloween pub crawl, or the return of the Literific annual Halloween pub crawl. So you can also sign up to that on the story on Instagram. There's a sign up form for that. So we'll be starting off at Queen's and then going to a few different pubs and then finishing the night at Tremlin.
Thank you.
This is a group taxi we've got too.
What? Yeah, we'll be outside Queen's at 2 on Tuesday and getting group taxis up if that's the way. You can make your own way up if you want, but there's also the option of group taxis.
Thank you. So, key point there is you're not allowed to go unless you sign up, because Stormont requires us to give specific numbers and names for everyone. So if you want to go to the debate on the protocol in Stormont, you have to sign up, which is on our Instagram as well, which is grand. Any other council announcements? Speak now or forever hold your peace. No? Grand. So then it is my pleasure to welcome the lovely Josie as our secretary to read the minutes from last week's debate. Please give Josie a massive round of applause, please.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for coming tonight. So, on the 13th of October 2022, the Queen's University Belfast Literary and Scientific Society convened for the 4th ordinary meeting of the 174th session for the motion, "This House would ban street preachers from Pride." As usual, the meeting began with announcements. Ryan Hoey, HLM, announced the return of the Stormont Mixer on October 25th, as he just did there, so please do sign up if you can. After a reading of the minutes, the meeting moved to private members' business. Ryan Hoey, HLM, brought up the news of the Queen's University providing £8 million to support students during the cost of living crisis. Responses were heard by Ellie Byrne, HLM, Kira Swale, HLM, Daniel McCormick, President Emeritus, Jack Hanlon, James Orchard, HLM, Jamie Warren, Aidan McCartney, Megan Hewitt, Dermot Hamill, and Gary Soap. John Lavery presented the news of Elon Musk advocating for the Ukraine to give territory to Russia. Responses were heard by Daniel McCormick, Ryan Hoey, HLM, Christopher Lynch, James Orchin, HLM, and Dermot Hamill. President's questions then commenced. James Orchin, HLM, asked for the breakfast question to be banned permanently from private members' business. No one supported this motion.
Actually, it was freedom rather than.
Megan Hewitt then suggested that the president could be Judge Judy for Halloween. All he would need is a permed brown wig. After President's questions, the vote of prior opinion was held. There were 16 votes for aye, 29 votes for nay, and 7 abstentions, so the proposition had it. First on the proposition was Jack Hanlon. First, Jack argued that the preacher's principal aim is to disrupt pride, giving very little regard to actual biblical scripture. In modern Christian thought, utilizing the Bible for homophobic means is an outdated concept and should not be tolerated. Jack proposed that the preachers have intentionally interpreted the scripture to persecute members of Pride. For the LGBTQ+ community, their right to express themselves should not be disrupted by hate preachers. First in the opposition was Jacqueline Bonner. Jacqueline proposed that banning street preachers is a condemnation of free speech, with Pride being a prime example of a celebration of this right. Ultimately, banning street preachers will give homophobes the opportunity to take advantage of this perceived oppression of their rights. Pride provides solidarity and emotional support systems. Together, this will help to deal with this form of hate speech. Second on the proposition was Molly Hines. Molly illustrated the common sighting of teenagers protesting against street preachers in Belfast. However, there are far more sinister implications of street preaching during a Pride event. There is ultimately a time and place where street preaching is appropriate. Nonetheless, Pride is meant to allow queer people to celebrate their identities in a safe space. The LGBTQ+ community is a minority group that is still facing discrimination today. Spreading harmful messages can only go on to directly hurt the progress that the community has fought for. Second on the opposition was Peter Hutchison. Peter argued that hate speech has never been the intention of street preachers. He proposed that the metaphorical truck of God's judgment is speeding towards us and that it is the job of the preachers to warn everyone. If this house professes to be one of tolerance and accepting different opinions, then the motion to ban street preachers is hypocritical. The final speaker in the proposition was Dermot Hamill. He proposed that the scaremongering tactics employed by street preachers only serves to alienate the LGBTQ+ community further. Having experienced discrimination at school, encounters with street preachers has left him feeling the same helplessness he did as a teenager. Ultimately, hate is not and should not be welcomed at Pride. The final speaker for the opposition was Ryan Hoey, HLM. Ryan argued that a few street preachers at Pride ultimately do not disturb the event, as they are drowned out by the celebratory cheers of the crowd. He stated that as Pride is supposed to be a celebration of freedom, by supporting the motion, you are ultimately restricting the freedom of others. It's instead, through civilized conversations between the Pride members and street preachers, both sides can be engaged and hear each other's arguments. Questions were heard from James Orchin, HLM, Brian Redpath, and Megan Hewitt. Following the debate and questions from the House, the vote on speaker ability took place. There were 38 votes for the proposition, 13 votes for the opposition, and 5 abstentions, so the proposition had it. May I take the minutes as read?
Thank you very much, Josie. Whoa, hold your horses. Hold your horses. Quiet, please. So now we turn our attention to private members' business. So this is your opportunity to, Jesus Christ, to ask any questions you've heard in the news or anything on politics you'd like to answer. So, fingers on buzzers, who's going first? We'll take, yes, please state your name for the minutes, please. Before I start, I will allocate an extra 5 minutes time this week because there are so many, I'd imagine, coming our way. So I'll start now. Please state your name.
So, given all that has occurred, given the fact that we have seen what we've seen today, given all of that and all that could possibly be discussed, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
This is not breakfast. I'm not coming to you in the future. Yes, please.
I'm aware this is the topic of the day, and all I'm going to say about it is long live the lettuce. And
Any point on Liz Truss and the lettuce? Why do we have a point on that? Yes, state your name for the
Not on the
minutes,
lettuce. I didn't hear the second part.
please. Yeah, state your name for it.
Ellie Byrne. I'm a lover of Susie Dent, if anyone knows who Susie Dent is. And her word of the day is, can you pronounce it? How do you think that one? Yeah, English didn't get Latibulate. To find a corner somewhere and hide in it. And I just love how Susie Dent's words always ring true to the day I'm having, so I think we should all just remember that word today.
Thank you. Yes, state your name, please.
Dermot Hamill. I personally feel bad for the Prime Minister because could you imagine moving into a house and and 44 days later you realise you have to move all of your stuff back out?
Yes, state your name for the minutes, please.
I just think at this point we should just repurpose 10 Downing Street because it's currently having shorter stays than a Premier Inn.
State your name, please. Yes.
I gave a speech in the society just for Christmas last year where I advocated in favour of divine right kings. I think I might become more prescient as each day goes on. I think that the arguments in favour of a divine monarchy are certainly being borne out here.
Any thoughts on the divine monarchy? Hopefully not. Why? Yes, I'd like to hear this statement. Yes, state your name. Yes, state your name for the minutes, please.
We should all go back to papal states.
Yes.
Very few people should be allowed to vote.
Yes.
The voting that they do will only be interpreted by those who are divinely righteous. And I believe that will be the most just and equitable society the world has ever created. So true.
Thank you for that. Yes, state your name for the minutes, please.
John Larry, I just want to say the whole bollocks with the Prime Minister and all that chaos, it started with the House of Hanover. Let's maybe just go back to the Jacobite, whoever.
Oh, I'm getting excited tonight.
You're speaking as well. I still love this. Any other points? Yes, state your name.
Jack Hanlon. I just want to get this joke off before anyone else does. I'm actually pretty happy with what Liz Truss has done because so far she's the greatest Irish nationalist to
Spicy,
No,
right?
I have a spicy one of this.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, it's kind of spicy. I just think that, this is a sign that we should have a general election and that 0.05% of the population shouldn't vote in our leader because has it worked? How many Tory MPs have we had now? Like 7 of them are still alive. 44 days, fastest time anyone's been in and out of number 10. Like, maybe the public, all of it, should, elect a leader. I think it's about time. That's pretty long to hold it off for.
I do realise we're cutting heavily into probably people's speeches tonight, but
it's not like ours.
yes, state your name for the minutes, please.
Okay, right now, let's sort of have a vote on who's going to take over, or possibly if they don't, whittle it down to 2 and then one of them drops out. I mean, I think it's looking increasingly likely that there probably will be a general election at some point, because I don't think you can sustain, changing leaders so quickly, not have a general election. But constitutionally, there isn't any requirement for a general election, but I think politically it will become unsustainable unless the party chooses to bring back the person who has still not fulfilled the rest of his mandate. Not that I'm necessarily in favour of that, but I think that's the only way that they'd avoid having a general election is if the person who won the mandate in the first place comes back to continue the rest of his office.
Any thoughts on Boris Johnson returning as Tory leader?
No, I'll be it.
Oh, sorry, can't go on further on that. Sorry. Are there any points that are not related to Liz Truss?
Has anything more happened this week?
Oh, yes, go for it.
Gary, so I would like to talk about the elections, but the president doesn't let me to, so I'm going to talk about something else. Recently, the Queen's University has bought like a big chunk of land from a Cardinals company, which was they intend to build more student accommodations. As a town planner, the city is full of houses for multiple occupation. The city doesn't want this, and yet the Queen's do. Now I'd like to hear what the House has to say.
Oh,
yes.
I have something on this. So basically, due to my dad's job, city centre. This I know this information. City centre cannot. It's actually like we're trying to get planning permission for housing around Belfast, and that includes the Shankill area as well. Because city centre still has a sewage system that's over 100 years old, and that's why if you ever work in city centre, you'll know for a fact the toilets constantly get blocked and absolutely smell like a sewers on each of them. I work in KFC. That's not our fault, I swear. Take that off the record, please. I like my job. What do you call it? Anyway, the sewage system is over 100 years old and cannot cope with any more people living or any big office buildings in city centre, and that includes around kind of the lower bit of Queen's area. So another reason why the city is like, no, you can't do that planning. It isn't anti-students. It's just they don't want all our houses getting flooded with sewage. So that's just an insight onto that of maybe they should move it up to Strand Mills a bit more, where it's a newer sewage system, maybe.
Any more thoughts on this topic? Yes, state your name for minutes, please.
Good morning. I think it's crazy that Queens and Ulster are continuously building these apartments that no student can afford, even with it's crazy. We're all struggling to find houses that we can't actually pay rent on. So obviously the universities do not give a crap what their students can actually manageably live in. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any further points on this? Anyone we've not had? Yes.
So on the point about sort of planning and everything, I take the point Ellie makes about logistical reasons why they can't build more. But I do think that the way the planning system works in Belfast is terrible. Like there was the old Students' Union building was full of before the new one was built. It was like full of asbestos, and they closed it down for ages and knocked loads of bits down. But it took them forever to get planning permission to build. That's why that building took years to make and went way over budget. But then on the other point, that's actually reminded me about I don't want to raise another point of private members, this is in a current bit of private members, but I don't know if everyone's seen that from next year, I think it is, they're increasing the maintenance loan by 40%, which is probably about time considering it's been, at the same level since 2010 and inflation's been, I don't know how much over that period of time.
Anyone got any thoughts on the increase in maintenance loan? No? Okay. Everyone's in favour of that, I presume. Anyone, any other points of private members' business? Yes?
It's not going to be about Liz Truss, I promise, but I think that one of the reasons she may have chosen this week to resign is because we all know she's a massive Swiftie, and Taylor Swift is releasing her new album this week, so I think she actually just wants time off to properly enjoy the album, and to quote Chloe Ferguson's Twitter, she's just using the opportunity to sort of relate to the breakup songs a bit more deeply.
Any thoughts on Taylor Swift's new album? Yes?
Serious question. Everyone listens to Taylor Swift, right? But I never hear her in clubs. What's up with that?
You're going to the wrong place. Exactly. I don't like her, I can never get away from her.
If you're in the right club, you'll hear Taylor Swift. Yes?
Megan, here, just a wee question towards one. Have you been in Kremlin before?
No one will take me.
You will if to go to the Halloween pub crawl. That's all I'm saying. Any further points on Taylor Swift's album? Why is this in? Yes, please.
No.
Any further points generally? Yes.
Recently we've seen that Chris Heaton, our Secretary of State, has said that if parties do not come back, we're getting another election. And with the timeline of that, it could be on the 15th of December, which means the Christmas election, which could be cold. So I just wanted to give everyone thought about an upcoming Assembly election, because this one is going to be really not nice for council.
Yes.
I will just say, elections, if you're looking for part-time work, these are actually fantastic opportunities. I'm not saying that trying to be facetious or anything like that. Just keep an eye out, there's always opportunities.
Good point. Yes. Sorry, yeah.
I'm actually happy because as someone who didn't get the chance to vote in 2019 elections, I get to vote 2 elections this time. One for my home country, one for this country. This is great.
Yes.
Well, there's not really any point in it. Like, with the MLAs have been saying it themselves, we got a result. The DUP need to suck it up and just go and do their bloody jobs. Like, the likelihood is they'll lose more seats, or what they'll do is they'll split unionist votes so that people don't actually vote in people they want. There might be unionists who just vote them in just so they'll actually go and do the job, which isn't the way anyone should be voting. They should just get to choose who they want to represent them.
Thank you. Any points on the DUP? Yes.
It's not fun.
My short form answer would be no, dear God, please no. I also say, I mean, you were saying before about the point when you were thinking about per canvassers. The per canvassers, the worst canvassers aren't going to be the ones who do the lines. We're going to my grandparents, because my grandmother will open the door and say, oh, sorry, hard of hearing. My wife will do it, and she will then start screaming about Nanny Non's husband for about 10 minutes, and then slam the door in their face, which, yeah, I'm just saying, I feel sorry for the ones who have to canvass around our area.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not going to speak with DUP. For the canvasser point, fluffy socks, gloves, and a hot chocolate go far. And also on your point about bad cards, I have plenty of experiences of funny events. We'll call them funny when I was canvassing. One fun thing to do though that some of us will like is if you're canvassing, make a bingo card of the worst possible responses. It makes getting harassed down the street and chased by a car a lot funnier if you can go bingo at the end of it and win a drink. So yeah, if you are a party that is slightly controversial, gets doors slammed in your faces with the opponents and you're canvassing, make a wee bingo card among music. It'll help keep your positive spirits up and not cry.
Good tip there. Any further comments on the election? Yes, state your name for the minutes, please.
Does anyone have any thoughts on DUP and Jim Shannon saying that DUP and the UUP should merge together for the election?
That's good. Yes.
Would it be common sense for unionism? Yes, it's going to happen. No. Because
Yes.
of course, whatever is
Sorry.
logical will be done will not be done, because in this country everything's stupid.
Yes.
I think that the struggle at the moment is the UP's tell me if I'm wrong, at the moment trying to do the kind of more liberal side. So that's where they're getting most of their voter base, is people going, nah, the DUP are a bit too religious for me. I'll go for the UUP. So if they merge together, surely to God, it'll just get to the point where the DUP are like, no, we don't like the UUP because they're too out there. Then the UUP go, oh no, we don't like the UUP because they're too out there in a different way. And they'll just collide and just go, no, we're not doing this alliance, let's feck it, we'll vote for someone else, which is a very big probability of happening, because they're, fair enough, they want the union, but everything else they're very opposed on, which would make an election very difficult for them to join.
Yes.
I think, honestly, I'm not even looking at this from a Republican's point of view. I think looking at it as a strategist point of view would be brilliant for the UUP. Because the UUP are a party, the UUP are a collection of independents at this point. Happen to share the same banners sometimes, but all the different social policies, they all just kind of like the union. So I don't understand why the UUP wouldn't go for it. I get that someone, the likes of Doug Beattie, doesn't really hate gay people, but For the likes of a lot of their representatives, it makes sense because they're just as conservative, or sometimes there's a lot of DUP ones who are just as liberal as the UUP ones. It makes sense for some of them, but there are going to be a lot who can't work with others.
Yes.
Maybe if they both come together, want to vote for them anymore, we actually get something done.
Yes.
Surely the better party similar to this point would be TUV and DUP, because I think in the last election, more of the unionist votes were getting split over TUV, especially in areas like Urias. Why they didn't elect UUP was because the unionist vote was split across TUV and TUV, not UUP.
Yes.
Sadly, as a former nobody else unionist, I know I read it. The problem is that about half of the votes else unionists get are from Fermanagh. I'm for 10 years ago, they had the leadership election. It was between that great figure in Northern Irish politics, Basil McCrae, for all the and Tom Elliott, and who I quite like, but nobody understands what he's speaking because he's from the sticks. And he won because they found out that over half the members of the party were from his constituency, and even though he didn't get support from the majority constituencies because there were so many, I'll be honest, cattle farmers in the Ulster Unionist Party, he was able to win in a landslide. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think in that regard, yes, the Ulster Unionists do tend to do better and have more liberal voices, but at the same time, the only area they actually do well in Northern Ireland is Fermanagh and South Tyrone, which is probably not as liberal as South Belfast.
Yes.
This is why democracy. Because the daily plebiscite cannot ever decide one thing to come together, which is why we need a charismatic leader.
Thank you for that, I guess. This is the... Quiet, please! No? You don't want... Okay. Is there one final, very short piece of private member's business or not? Yes.
It's not a new piece of private member's business. I was just going to go back and reflect on how Jim Shannon is an absolutely beautiful human being. Last year he came to our karaoke night, which was interesting. And he donated a bottle of wine for the rattle and raised quite a bit of money for the society. So yeah, that's my contribution on that.
Thank you. How are their comments on that? Yes.
I was going to say it wasn't for the society, it was for Toronto.
Retract that statement immediately. Yes, final point.
Reflect on Jim Shannon. Jim Shannon was also the MP who claimed the most expenses ever in the expenses at Scandal.
Do you know how much it was?
It was like £1 million.
Do you know what it was spent on?
That's been a very nice little line.
Yeah. Yes.
I remember a few years ago where they did the website called like Sexy MP, where they went and ranked MPs to give you like a picture or two of them and say it's more traffic. And Jim Shannon came 650 out of 650. To his credit, he responded by saying that at least my wife finds me sexy. So I have complete respect for the man, and he was all like that. So such a
Jim Shannon knows how to clap back. That's good. Okay, that is, yes, that's us for private memory business for today. It is my absolute, I was going to say pleasure, it's my absolute worst nightmare to turn to President's Questions for the evening. So for those of you who don't know what President's Questions is, this is your opportunity to ask me a question, which will be limited to 5 minutes only, for obvious reasons. So yes, we'll take, yes, state your name for the minutes, please.
Daniel now, look, as a fellow, young, handsome, charismatic young man,
Where's this going?
at the helm of the society, what's with the formalities? Why are you being so formal with us? What again?
You raise a very good question, and I know that this was mentioned in a conversation with us in the pub last week. Listen, maybe in times of old, this would have been seen as a proper actual statement, but in reality, I am fully taking the piss. It is fully a satirical way of implementing the illusion of formality. It is not actually a thing that I actually enjoy wearing, despite...
Give it over.
Oh my days. I'm not seeing any of these.
It's not my breakfast, I swear.
Okay, go for it.
What you have for dinner?
I didn't have dinner today, actually, sorry for that.
And you didn't have breakfast, you didn't have dinner, what did you eat?
I had nothing to eat today.
What?
Then you can't, you want to ask me next week? Yes. You again? Yes.
Yes, me again. What I was trying to say was give me my game back.
Come and take it off me, Mr. McCormick. Yes.
As someone who recently discovered that you're the co-founder and director of Pigmento, how did you do that?
I'll refer to Theo Burton for that question. I am not responding to any Pigmento questions because it is a different role. But yeah, fun times. Yes.
Right, so I'm asking for once a pragmatic question. What pubs are we going to for the Halloween pub crawl?
We can.
I don't think it's actually properly been decided yet.
No. As many as possible. Yes.
Once in President's questions, I quoted you, but I'm now asking for your permission to tweet that Jim Shannon knows how to clap back.
Provided you give me accreditation for that quote, yes. Go for it.
Serious question. Later on in the pub, what do you like people to buy it?
Oh, that's a lovely question. I'd take anything that's going, to be honest. Love a wee Rush of Thieves if you're ever about for a wee pint. But it'll be me buying, yes.
I still don't use more job security than the Prime Minister.
Well, I would say I'm only 5 weeks in, so who knows what could happen before the end of the year. So we'll soon find out if I'm the last. No, I'm not. No. Yes.
Pick a Jim Shannon or Jim Alistair.
I can't make political assertions, as you should well know.
Sexiest man, no, Jim Shannon. That's not political.
I have a real thing for Jim Alistair, as you know.
Has the president decided what he's wearing for Halloween this year?
Stop asking for Halloween. I don't know what I'm wearing for Halloween. I'm open to suggestions. Yes.
Considering we're living in times where there is such good meme content, should we not create a meme page that is specifically focused on literary content and named after the former president of the society?
Now, I can neither confirm nor deny that a Literific meme page exists. However, if you happen to give me your Facebook details, I may or may not be able to add you to a certain meme page that may or may not exist. Yes.
Same here, for also handy for speakers.
Yes, thank you. Again?
Yes.
Last one.
On the topic of sexy gyms, going off the runner's up, Jim Shannon or Jim Wales? Both?
Neither. I just couldn't comment. They're both so beautiful to say that.
This one's being recorded.
Yeah. I forgot it was being recorded actually. Are there any further questions? Please say no. Good. That concludes President's questions for the evening, and my soul is saved for another week. Now we turn to what do we turn to next session? Yeah, the vote of prior opinion. So, Jimmy, can you move the? Thank you. So this is your personal view on the motion. If you think that we should regret deposing Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, please raise your hand now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. 15, yeah. If you think that we should not regret deposing Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, please raise your hand now.
6, 7, Sorry.
37. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. If you want to abstain on tonight's motion, wow, actually, fair play. You can raise your hand now. 1, 2.
Oh, come on, you're lying.
Okay. 13? Yep. So do you have the results for the voter prayer?
Alright, so there were 15 votes for the proposition, 37 votes for the opposition, and 13 abstentions for the opposition candidate.
Thank you. Now, before I introduce tonight's first speaker, quiet please. Before I introduce tonight's first speaker, I'm going to go over the rules of the debate as usual. So each speech is 7 minutes in length. The first minute is protected time. So once you hear the first bell sound, that then means that you can ask a question to the speaker by raising your hand saying point of information. They can either choose to accept it or deny it. And then same again with the last minute of protected time. When the second bell sounds, you can then no longer ask any additional questions. As I said, if you raise your hand, the speaker can either choose to accept or deny. Do not raise your hand again to ask another question. That's considered barracking. And there is no back and forth, so if you raise your hand and they come back, you cannot then go back and into what the point that they've made. Two additional things is, please, if you're going to need to use the bathroom, please do so after someone's speech rather than during it, and also give a big round of applause after each speech as well. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome the first speaker for tonight's debate, which is Owen McCall. Please give everyone a big round of applause.
Thank you. Members of the House, opposition, and our most esteemed President, I will argue tonight that the decision to depose Boris Johnson was a regrettable mistake, and may I compliment the House on choosing such a time in this debate so perfectly. I've had to rewrite this debate pretty much every day over the last week because you need to just read the news, the TV, or see the recent polls that have came out to see what a grave mistake this deposition has resulted in. Truss managed to lose over 80% of her party's support, proving that she is still at heart a Lib Dem. But this is not just a disaster for the Conservative Party, but for the UK as a whole. Now, you might not like the Conservatives, but they're currently the party in charge. And when there's such instability resulting from this decision, it affects all of our lives. So I would gladly accept a stable administration over whatever this is. The Conservative members decided to choose a leader who could not outlast the 60p head of lettuce. A PM with approval ratings that plummeted to almost as low as that of Vladimir Putin. We've seen the mood change from one of shock to anger to just pity. And now relief? Well, no, we're still relying on a small band of Conservatives who do not represent the country as a whole to as this leadership has shown. Now, Churchill said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all the other forms. With all the flaws that we have in this system, it's still best, it still functions best operating under the mandate of the people. Now tell me, what is a greater mandate for governing? 14 million votes or 80,000? Like him or not, Boris won the biggest majority from the voters in over 30 years. He had the ability which every other Conservative MP sorely lacks to speak to the forgotten, downtrodden, red wall voters that were so callously abandoned by Labour.
You said that Boris had won the biggest majority of the voters in the 40 years. What about Tony Blair?
30 years, sorry, and yeah, it was 87. It was bigger than Tony Blair's. If we can learn anything from Truss's short premiership, it's that being Prime Minister is a tough job. We can't afford to have a general election right now at this moment. We need someone urgently to steady this ship of instability, to prevent it from sinking. And the only person who has that mandate to lead is Boris. Someone with a proven track record of leading exactly what we need right now. As Nadine Dorries has pointed out again and again and again, he is the only candidate who has this right to leadership, the only one who was actually elected by the people. Are we going to accept another lame duck of a leader that the psychos who pay for Tory membership want to enforce on us? Another radical think tank pulling the strings, using us as lab rats for their economic experiments. Now, I struggle to see how there could be a more ill-suited candidate for the role chosen than our 4th PM in 6 years. But if there's anyone up for the job, it's the Conservative member base. Jacob Rees-Mogg, perhaps? Now, as a representative democracy, we take our ideal elected servants to be nothing more than vessels to carry forth the views of their voters. Is it not a violation of this principle for a leader to be guided by ideology rather than the will of the people? One need to look no further than the current chaos to see why this is so important. The disregard for conservative orthodoxy that Boris shown was often portrayed as not believing in anything, but it was in fact his greatest strength. He would do anything popular, anything the people wanted, which made him the perfect politician. But his impassioned defense of the autonomy of Kiev saw the UK lead the way in shipping weapons to the brave Ukrainian soldiers fighting on the ground against tyranny, which showed that he stood strongly behind this principle. The affinity that Zelensky has shown for Boris, going out of his way to praise the UK as an honourable exception to the sluggish pace with which with which EU nations have delivered on their weapons promises, lends real practical credibility to this defence. The gratitude of Ukrainians for his sacrifice is so great that they even named a street after him. He saved the country from the protracted embarrassment that was Brexit. After 3 long years of Remainer government, Labour's catastrophic defeat in that election showed just how unpopular going against the popular vote is. You can't just hold an election until you get the result you want. Unless you're the DUP, of course. You must respect the will of the people. And one such benefit we managed to get from leaving the EU was the fantastic vaccine rollout, which saw the UK outpace the sluggish EU so quickly that they had no other response but to fearmonger over its safety. Damage in the public's eyes that can never be undone, conducted for no other reason than petty jealousy at seeing any success from Boris managing a UK detached from Brussels. And his mandate was one against austerity, of levelling up, something you never would have expected from a leader of the Conservatives. But now that mandate is in tatters. The people's will has been usurped by a small clique of ideologues who have plunged the country into chaos, ripe for another round of spending cuts, right when people can afford it least. We're now facing a return to the Cameronite years of cuts, but there's nothing left to cut. The Brexit vote was a rejection of this doctrine, as was the election of Boris. Our only hope now is to bring him back, at least until a general election can be called, to save us from this crisis, just as he did by getting Brexit done. And he is still the only possible choice who's actually been elected by the voters. We cannot allow another unelected leader to take the helm. Back the will of the people, but vote proposition. Thank you.
Thank you to Owen for his fantastic speech. To the first member of the opposition, Owen Usher, give Owen a big round of applause.
So just before I begin, I've kind of got long COVID symptoms, so if I'm coughing, don't worry, I'm not sick. So, Owen, thank you for your brave speech. You said that you rewrote your speech several times. I refuse to rewrite mine. The facts are the facts. The past is the past. The only rebuttal I have to offer you is this. I come here not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? And now on to my speech. Boris Johnson always seemed like my sort of guy, not politically. But in terms of how we carry on in life, the energy, that is my zone. I've only ever really cared about, this is going on Spotify, isn't it? Yeah. All I've ever really cared about, drink, violence. Matthew will kick me out if I say the last thing. And it's given me a fair few stories to share. It's given me something of a personality, sure. But it's also made me singularly unqualified to ever hold public office. So why the absolute fuck does the proposition think that this idiot was qualified to do it? Boris Johnson was, will I say, a prime minister for his time. He was head of a government that couldn't govern. Head of a state that should have more aptly been called the not-so-united kingdom of a little less than Great Britain and north, but not the most north, since that's in Donegal, Northern Ireland. And just like the state that he ruled, which was full of inherent contradictions, the inherent contradictions of Boris Johnson proved too much for him. He was always going to fail. It was only a question of when, so much as it was a question of how. Like the fruit in your fridge, under the new packaging laws, that's gonna go off. It's just a question of when the mould appears. No, thank you. This is a man who was caught getting a blowjob from his mistress in his work office and got away with it. This is a man whose personal life was so disgusting and depraved that a judge said it was a matter of public importance that it was disclosed in court. This is a man who, with his genes, willingly reproduced, according to Wikipedia, at least 6 times. We don't even know how many times. But to move on to another point, people say things have gotten bad under Truss, or they were getting bad under Truss. Were things good under Boris? Were things getting better under Boris? There's 2 main aspects to that point. Firstly, the policies he followed, the things he did, and secondly, the people he surrounded himself with. Boris broke international law. He actually did it twice in 1 week. That's pretty cool, not gonna lie. There was some pretty good analysis written about this at the time, when he threatened the peace process here, and also tried to fuck his blue wall voters and steal the tariff laws in the same week. One of the quotes I remembered was to do with how, while right-wing media always rails against those fucking pansies in the European Court of Justice and the Court of Human Rights or whatever, politicians held back from messing around with that too much. They towed the line, they followed the status quo. But Boris is a man of contradictions. Like the state, he failed to govern. An unholy alliance between the second and the fourth estates, and he carried out the policies of a vitriolic, Murdoch-controlled press in the manner of an Oxbridge-educated politician. There hasn't been a prime minister since Thatcher who made Britain out to be internationally that sort of evil, twisted, imperial monster that European cartoons and Irish folklore have long since made it out to be. If you... Tony Blair. I surrender that point. Is there a better image of the personification of perfidious Albion than Boris Johnson? He set Britain's reputation back 50 years, and even Starmer won't be able to fix the damage that he did. Boris wasn't just incompetent, he was maliciously incompetent. The people Boris surrounded himself with are and were a reflection of this. So let's go through them. This is where it gets really bad. Priti Patel, a woman so evil. The British Army told her they just couldn't follow through on her plan to use them to secure British waters from refugee Syrian children that the British Army bombed out their homes. Silence there, lads, thank you. Shaps, recently promoted, soon demoted. who is willing to let cancer patients die rather than engage with the rail unions in some sort of, we don't negotiate with terrorists except with their own country. Michael Gove, who looks like something that escaped from the lab of Jacob Rees-Mogg. And I'll finish with Shailesh Vera, who once asked if he needed a passport to go to Derry from Belfast. When he was junior minister to the Northern Irish office. You're all waiting for me to get to the perverts. But do I need to? You all know those stories, you all know those horrors, those monsters, you know the sort of mates that he had. The corrupt and the complacent, the perverted and the prejudiced. Matt should have kept his hands to himself, cock. Pinchy, the pervert. Third degree burns. My final point is simple. We can't undo the past. What's done is done. Johnson's oversight, his moral ineptitude or misunderstanding of what is appropriate in modern society caught up with him. Only a man raised in the British public school system could think it's okay to give a knighthood to a bloke on the basis they didn't rat on him getting a blowjob in the work office. Let's hold some degree of consistency here. How come when Boris gets caught, it's a bit of a tabloid scandal, but he's fine, he gets a promotion a little while later. But when I get caught, I have to flee up here to this place to do a master's. So what if I was a tour guide in Dublin city centre? A basic level of human decorum is expected. But lads, we need to move on. Looking back won't fix anything. Only those recently dumped from relationships, please don't fucking talk to me. Think about what could have been done differently, what could have fixed it. It isn't constructive. A society must look forward to improve. Don't be scared. We can go there, we can make it better together, but we can't look back to find it. We must be more than him and we must move on. Thank you.
Huge round of applause for Owen's maiden speech. It is now my pleasure to welcome the second speaker for the proposition, James Orchard. Give James a microphone of applause.
Just before I start here, so don't hit the button. Let me be honest, this is just sort of a rant more than anything. I don't even mention Boris until about halfway through, so you can see what sort of thing I'm talking about there. So if you want to... So Mr. President, the Conservative Party is an attempt to construct a party without principles. Its basis is that it's sort of a big tent that's so wide that it's not actually discernible what the actual foundations of it are. So the inevitable consequence of this is it promotes nothing that could be considered even remotely conservative. At times of political upheaval and social alarm, such a big tent outfit's convenient in the sense that it's able to help get people who could be described as politically timid within the confines of said tent. But when those threats go away, when they subside and people begin to actually ask why they're actually banding together, it becomes quite difficult to define what the actual purpose of the Conservative Party is besides being a stopgap rather than an actual political party. The leaders of the party might profit from their position by attaining power for their own individual gratification, but they prove unable or unwilling to secure for their followers and voters what the actual purpose of a political party is, which is to actually put into practice principles and policies. And here, this is the point really where the awkward question naturally arises: what exactly are they going to be conserving? The monarchy they'll conserve so long as it doesn't do anything. The House of Lords, provided it doesn't do anything. The Church of England, provided it doesn't actually do anything Christian. In short, these are institutions. They're not institutions, they're more phrases rather than a fact. They'll be defended by the Conservatives so long as they actually don't have any real purpose. Now, while such phrases and ideas are religiously cherished and you repeat them enough to become a mantra, in the actual practice, the actual practice of the Conservative Party is whenever any sort of threat comes, they will bend the knee and say, oh, okay, sure, yeah, okay, we'll compromise in the end of the time. Now, the desire to get the best bargain from an arrangement in order to have a sort of temporary lull in and agitations between them and their opponents is what the Conservative Party has done ever since it was founded. The Conservatives shrink from principle, they're embarrassed by tradition, they loathe the past, retreat from the present, and they make no preparations for the future. Mr. President, while I wholeheartedly agree with this sentiment, they're not my own words. These are the sort of abridged words from Benjamin Disraeli, and they were written the best part of 200 years ago, and don't they ring true still? The Conservative Party was founded in 1834 by Sir Robert Peel, whose political strategy and so-called statesmanship, which is the hallmark of the present-day Conservative Party, is whenever a major crisis happens, feebly defend one position, then switch sides and say, I actually supported it all along. Now, in my view, Disraeli is probably one of the greatest prime ministers of this country's history, in the sense that he's called the father of one nation conservatism, which is sort of nowadays used as sort of a god-awful term that's basically, I'm a Blairite, but I can't call myself that in the Conservative Party. Okay, but ultimately, when Disraeli actually first founded it, it sort of combined really quite a traditional Tory position of defence of sort of the working classes against what they saw as the mercantile interests in the country, and sort of a union between what was then the aristocracy and the working class. It obviously doesn't work anymore. But intriguing. Okay. Now, indeed, Disraeli in 1868, I found a really funny letter which was from Engels to Marx, where they got really angry and said, once again, the proletariat has discredited itself by voting Tory. How dare they? In ways, it's sort of a bit like when Boris broke down the Red Wall, but in a more extreme instance. But yeah, I'm actually going to mention Boris here for the first time in this speech. The thing is, I don't actually think Boris is the actual matter at hand here in terms of dealing with the Conservative Party, because I think it's much bigger than simply him. I'm going to be the first to say here, I don't really like Boris as an individual. I think his morals are offensive to my own, and I don't think he's any really in ideas or beliefs besides self-preservation. Yet, in fact, in the 2019 election, what he actually represented, or could have represented, I think was of importance. He had a potential to tear up sort of the liberal spectrum within the Conservative Party, be it neoliberalism or economic liberalism that we saw with now soon to be former Prime Minister Liz Truss. I actually wrote deceased in this by mistake. Or sort of the social and cultural liberalism of Blairism / Cameronism, by focusing on sort of a more culturally conservative platform that could actually appeal to the working classes of the country, or at least the masses of the country, rather than what David Cameron or Liz Truss would have promoted. The pandemic and Boris's obsession of building back better, quote unquote, in a feminine and gender-neutral, eco-friendly way, I don't know what that means, or Peppa Pig, would ensure that there was a potential shift in the sort of stale zombie Thatcherism that has been sort of the tendency from the Conservative Party in the last few decades, and the move away from the Blairite consensus in politics. But that's not going to happen now, because they got rid of Boris, but this might not. I don't know. I'm not putting money on what's going to happen in the election. The alternative, really, what the alternatives in the party are is you either have Cameronism, which is sort of represented a bit by Jeremy Hunt, a man who thought that the best policy for lockdown was to follow what they did in China by sealing people in their homes and then welding their doors shut. And he said this is a good thing, which is clearly going to appeal to a lot of Conservative voters. Is that right or not? Yeah. Or the alternative, which I've described as zombie Thatcherism, which is promoted by an equally decrepit individual in the form of Liz Truss, as we've seen in the recent few hours. So Boris at least represented the possibility that a major party in the country could actually represent what can be described as traditional politics in sort of a traditional or cultural conservatism, which historically, before the Conservative Party became obsessed with simply the markets, was doing a helping hand for those less well-off in society, supporting what could be described as the common good over big business, and opposing unrestricted free markets. But that's not going to happen now, because the dogma within the party now is either let's do austerity or let's do tax cuts for bankers, which I don't think anyone supports outside of a select few. So ultimately, I think Boris at least representing different to what half the party I think wants to look to Chairman Mao, the other half wants to look towards the monopoly man for their political future. But Boris is not great, but at least he gave some vague ideas that were conservative in sort of the common good sense of the term, or old-fashioned Toryism, rather than Blairism of some variety or colour. By all means, destroy the Conservative Party, Mr. President, but let's not pretend the ideological and managerial rot set in with Boris. As a result, I'd ask the House to please consider at least voting with the proposition in tonight's debate. Thank you.
Speaker for the opposition, Katie Hughes.
I would like to preface this entire speech with the fact that I may or may not have signed up after one too many pints in the pub. Take that how you will. I have gathered in my brief stint in the Literific that there has been a history of corruption in this society. And seeing as our opponents appear to be continuing in that trend in their support of Johnson, I would like to be very above board in my offer to specifically James and Daniel and anyone else who feels so inclined. Go easy on the interjections, and there might be a pint in it for you as well. Firstly, I would like to begin. Have our opponents lost their minds?
Yes.
You seriously expect to convince us, an educated audience, to regret the deposition of Johnson? A flaky, wishy-washy, brittle, miserable excuse for a top position, and that's just his hair. Johnson would have the public believe that he is just that, his hair. Dare I use the insult as an avid hydrogen peroxide user myself? Blonde. Boris the blonde. Bojo makes a mistake, kills off half the population in the worst managed COVID outbreak in the modern world, and it's oopsies from Boris. I mean, this is the man who attempted to prorogue Parliament illegally, and only after an actual scolding, dressing down, and spank on the bum by the Supreme Court did he sideline that idea. Again, whoops. This is the man who runs the country exactly like he does his personal life. It was just one little accident after the other, of which there are still an unknown number. 6? 7? The marketing programme put in place for Johnson's cult of personality is admirable. Supposedly, he must be one of the very best educated people in the world, an Etonian and an Oxford grad. And yet, the public have been trained to expect more from a baboon than Johnson. I beg the audience not to fall into the same marketing trap my opponents have. Baboons are great to see in the zoo, but the kind of behaviour so embarrassing it makes one's bottom red has no place in a modern democracy. The argument here is that I do not regret deposing Boris Johnson. This argument is in no way supposed to be an endorsement of Liz Truss. Although, and I might add, she wasn't really helping me today when I was writing this. Some might argue that deposing Boris was wrong because we've ended up with Truss, albeit for a very short stay, and yet I'm going to disagree with those people. Johnson's issue was the fact that he was a horrendous person. He literally hosted parties in Parliament when the rest were locked up for 2 years. I mean, I think the fines that Queens were giving out in Elms were more severe than the punishment that he got. Furthermore, on my list for why it was correct to depose Johnson, his chief of staff was Dominic Cummings. Need I say more? I realise we have a history of dodgy spads in NI, but at least they were good at being criminals. This man couldn't even... This man couldn't even break a COVID boundary discreetly. Truss, on the other hand, simply had a little trouble on the old arithmetic side. Oh, I've lost my point. Her issue was that she couldn't math the math, economics the economics. She struggled to mini-budget the mini-budget. As a law student, that's something I can reconcile with. Truss was not an awful person. She simply gaslit, gatekept, and girl-bossed way. As a proud nationalist, I argue, let the Tories destroy themselves, one incompetent leader after another, and perhaps we'll be ever closer to the dissolution of the 1801 Act of Union. The last 4 months of Tory psychodrama has done more for the cause of Irish nationalism and a 32-county sovereign state than 800 odd years of militant republicanism. Michael Collins, Eamon de Valera, and James Connolly could only wish to have made the impact of Johnson, Truss, Doris and Gove. At this point, however, I think the Tories might have outdone themselves, and I am beginning to feel a little bad for them. That does not mean that I regret the deposition of Boris. While Boris has been in the spotlight remarkably less than usual, to quote another Irish Republican hero, he hasn't gone away, you know. This may have been a Truss administration, but the chaos, confusion, U-turns and corruptions is Johnson's legacy.
Point of information.
No. After all, Boris needed to be deposed of. He was doing too good a job destroying the great union of our Isles. He was letting the cat out of the bag that he's secretly in bed with Michelle O'Neill. Who knows? Maybe that's an accident number 8 waiting to happen. Be that a United Ireland if he gets re-elected or another baby Johnson, I don't know which will be more entertaining. To conclude, I am adamantly against the motion of this House tonight. I do not regret the deposition of Boris Johnson for the reasons stated. He has ridiculous hair. He has an unknown number of offspring waiting to someday take over British Parliament. He attempted to basically create a dictatorship, suspending Parliament. He is evil. Truss is just incompetent and a result of Johnson's awful governance. And finally, he needed to be deposed of, because he was a sleeper agent for Sinn Féin and he was becoming suspiciously too good.
Massive round of applause for Katie. That is her maiden speech. It is now my pleasure to welcome the finalists of your composition. Tell us your next character, tell us your name.
Hello, members of the House. While I was researching for this debate, I came across the fact that Boris Johnson is a massive fan of Blair and that Liz Truss is a Swiftie. Now, although I may be staying up till 5 a.m. tonight to listen to Taylor Swift's new album, Midnights with the Lovely Ladies, Grace Moyna and Molly Hines sitting right over there, overall I am a bigger fan of Damon Albarn, and that is why I am on this side of the debate tonight. Bojo is my favourite leader that ever has been or will be. And I am now a Tory. And this is on video, so. Anyway, rather than bore you with questionable statistics like Liz Truss murdered 60% of all orphans, I thought I would I said, it was questionable. A man who can challenge the McSparns with the amount of kids he's having. I thought I would take you on a mini historical tour of the United Kingdom as I'm a... What is that?
Point of information.
No, it's fine.
Is it almost 1 minute?
Yes. Give me.
Go.
Point of information. There are more McSparn children than Boris Johnson children. Smashing me a lot.
So anyway, I thought I'd take you on a mini historical tour of the United Kingdom to really set the scene for today's current problems. You mightn't think it's relevant, but I'll get there. For the past 300 years, the United Kingdom, it wasn't called that or whatever, has ultimately caused more harm than good in our world, objectively from my own viewpoint. A small group of people concentrated in England colonised a large section of the world, exploited them, caused famines, plagues, wars and massacres. To exemplify this, let's take India, where after the United Kingdom colonised it, there was the first Bengal famine, the second Bengal famine, and then the Bengal massacre, and also they claimed to take over the whole of India when they only took over 2/3, which you're really getting too big for your boots there. But you know. Now, of course, with the ongoing collapse of most of the colonies in the 20th century, we did see some improvement in the United Kingdom's treatment of the ordinary people. No. Especially after World War II, where philosophically we saw the rise of socialism, and economically we were going through our little Keynesian era with the National Health Service, free education, the welfare state, all great leap forwards, however cack-handedly they were realised. This is until the United Kingdom returned to its old worst habits with neoliberalism. where I would say that they kind of had an internal colonisation where the United Kingdom has instead taken advantage of its own ordinary people, and we are feeling the effects of it, and there is no need for explanation there. We are definitely feeling this exploitation. To get a little bit more modern with it, then we have Boris. Now, he got Brexit done, and boy did he do it well. He threw great parties when we were all dying from COVID. He rugby tackled 7-year-olds to the ground. I guess.
Was it his child?
And he supported British culture by going to Peppa Pig World, and all in the name of the United Kingdom. That, of course, is a lie. Boris Johnson eroded the UK's reputation for good governance and allowed corruption, and when it came to Brexit, his gamble failed and the UK has changed for the worse. I promise I am on the proposition. But, to quote Napoleon, never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake. But he was interrupted when all of his cabinet abandoned him, and emerging from the shadows to save the UK in her own Mr. Bean-like way was Liz Truss. She was paving the way for the UK to have a stable and prosperous future called the Labour Party. This is the part where I realised Liz Truss resigned, because I wrote this morning. If you didn't know, Liz Truss resigned today. Okay, somebody stop airdropping me things. Is that you, Noah? Okay, if you didn't know, Liz Truss resigned today. She's the shortest reigning Prime Minister in our history with 44 days in power, because everyone and their mother went, if she can wreck our economy in that time, what can she do in 2 years? Now you may be thinking, well, we're fine, the Labour Party are topping the polls. Keir Starmer will be in power soon enough and clear up all the mess that the Tories have made. Well, usually I would be happy about this, but not tonight, and not just because I'm on proposition. The reason I gave you that 300 years worth of history of the United Kingdom is to show you that there's a systematic problem within the United Kingdom that Keir Starmer will not fix. Labour will get in power for 10, 15 years, and the second the British public forgets what a shamble the Tories were, they will vote them back in. We're going to have an endless cycle of the Conservatives bankrupting us and the Labour Party cleaning it up time and time again. Labour is nothing more than a band-aid in this situation. Stop! I don't know who's airdropping me things. Okay. I call for the Conservatives to take responsibility for their actions by having a leader that is mildly more competent than Liz Truss or any of the other failed candidates they put forward to run this country. And as much as I hate to say that, that leader was Boris. If he had not been disposed, the Tory party would have had to take some consequences for their actions. They would have to make real change and not give up after they decide it's too hard and Labour can deal with it. We wouldn't have witnessed the scenes in the House of Commons last night with people being manhandled into voting. We might actually have some stability in the pound and heat this winter. When the British public say in a YouGov poll they prefer Vladimir Putin to Liz Truss, then you know something's wrong with the Tory leadership. Putin wants to nuke us. Liz Truss just nuked the economy, guys. I guess to summarise whatever it was I was trying to say here, if there are two buses driving off a cliff, one of those buses has an incompetent driver who secretly was trying to kill you, but he was pretty jolly while doing it, and the other bus driver was repeatedly taking all your money, there was no lights in the bus, there was no heating, and they were also driving off a cliff, I would pick the first bus. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tasha, for that fantastic speech. My turn, I'm pleasure to welcome the final speaker of the opposition, Kieran McDonald-Smith. Give Katie a massive round of applause.
Just to say to Tasha, thank you so much. I would like to start by outlining the 7 Nolan principles of public life. These principles outline the standards that are expected of our elected officials. These are selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty and leadership. It is clear from the premiership of Boris Johnson that these standards were not only ignored, but debased. The foundations of our democratic system depend on the honesty and accountability of our elected officials, and in particular, the Prime Minister. It is evident from his actions, inside and outside of Downing Street, that Boris Johnson was a man that was never fit for office. He was someone willing to hold the public and the principles which hold our democracy together with complete contempt. I'm sure I do not have to go into detail about the Partygate scandal that dominated the news agenda last year. The Sue and Gray report perfectly outlines the gravity of the events that occurred in Downing Street and the very culture that the Prime Minister not only presided over, but participated in. She outlines that there were failures of leadership and that there was a serious failure to observe not just the high standards expected of those working at the heart of government, but also of the standards expected of the entire British population at the time. Although may say that Johnson apologised for his behaviour, this is simply not good enough. The sacrifices made by every person in this room, everyone outside of it, healthcare workers, teachers, shop workers, the entire public, was undermined by a Prime Minister who knew what was going on, who knew the gravity of the pandemic, who knew the rules his government had written and chose to ignore them. Because here was a man who simply believed the rules did not apply to him. It is insulting to the sacrifices the public made and to the bereaved families of those who were lost to COVID that their Prime Minister had treated them with utter contempt. Not only this, but Johnson had a track record of ignoring crucial instances of inappropriate behaviour among his cabinet ministers and Conservative MPs. This starts with Priti Patel, the ex-Home Secretary, when in 2020 a Cabinet Office inquiry found that Patel had breached the requirements of the Ministerial Code following allegations of bullying. Undermining disciplinary procedure, Johnson said he had full confidence in her. His chief advisor on the Ministerial Code resigned in protest. In 2021, MP Owen Paterson was found to have breached paid advocacy rules by acting as a paid consultant for a medical supply company and a sausage factory. Boris Johnson actively encouraged the passing of a motion in the House of Commons that would have exonerated Paterson and would have set up a new Tory majority committee for the disciplinary process against MPs. This was passed, letting an MP who had used his position of privilege to earn money for personal gain walk free. After immense criticism and Paterson's resignation, Johnson said it was a mistake. This completely ignores the damage this scandal caused, another stain on accountability, honesty and integrity in public life. And finally, what was seen to be the final straw for most Conservative MPs, the Chris Pincher scandal. Chris Pincher admitted to inappropriate sexual behaviour in June 2022. Pincher, who was Deputy Chief Whip, had had allegations of sexual misconduct attached to his name since 2017. It emerged that Johnson was briefed about this conduct in that same year. Johnson denied that this had ever happened. It later emerged that this was true, and he retracted later. A man who had allegations of this nature against his name was allowed into a position of power, and although the whip was removed, there was no encouragement from Boris for him to resign. This shows concretely how Boris Johnson was willing to ignore detestable behaviour. He enabled individuals who disobeyed the code of conduct that governs ministerial behaviour to continue in their positions, governing the rest of the country. When we elect our representatives, is this what we expect of them? Of course not. Liz Truss just last week was quick to act in suspending the whip of Conor Burns after allegations of serious misconduct. He also lost his position as Minister of State for Trade Policy. This shows just how easy it was for Johnson to act. This makes the bare minimum look commendable. This is how you know that under Boris Johnson, parliamentary standards were in free fall. But Boris Johnson himself was not an honest individual. He will always be best known for his ability to combine hubristic charm with old Etonian waffle, to fluster and to divert, but most crucially, to be dishonest. One of the most notable examples of his dishonesty includes in 2021, when Boris Johnson told the House of Commons that all guidance was followed completely in number 10. We know this is a lie. No, thank you. In a poll conducted by JL Partners into the words most associated with Boris Johnson, 72% were negative. These words included untrustworthy, buffoon, hypocrite. The word that was most used was liar. His own MPs, one by one, started to grow restless with his dishonesty. David Davis gave a particularly poignant speech accusing the Prime Minister of absurd and frankly unbelievable explanations in an interview with regards to Partygate. At the end of his speech, Davis represented unequivocally the views of his party and the nation as a whole. You have sat here too long for all the good you have done. In the name of God, go. When we go to the ballot box, we expect our politicians to be honest and accountable. That is the nature of our social contract. But when these standards are debased and our representatives fail to maintain these standards, democracy has failed. We have seen what this means in the last 24 hours. What Boris Johnson did during his tenure in Downing Street could fill 50 of these speeches, but his legacy is on full display. The honesty and integrity we expect from our politicians has now ceased to exist. Mistakes have been glossed over by bluster and balderdash, screeching U-turns on policy, creating confusion and chaos, a brutal display of lack of honesty, and most of all, a lack of trust, and now lack of trust. This government is the legacy of Boris Johnson, and it is a continuation of the standards that he normalised. I don't regret getting rid of somebody who held the public with contempt in their hour of need. I don't regret getting rid of a man who enabled bullies and lobbyists to continue to roam the corridors of power. I don't regret getting rid of a liar. The only thing I regret, and this House should regret, is not getting rid of him sooner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we have another massive round of applause for Katie? And it is now my pleasure to turn our attention to questions from the floor. So do we have any questions for the proposition? You can raise your hand now. Yes?
On the first conservatism, when during the days of British development, they gave us railways, but during the quote-unquote Great imperialism, the convection of the UK, you guys still haven't got EHS, do you? Yeah, I don't really have much to do, sorry.
Proposition to respond? You can respond either way.
Again, yeah, I mean, translates a bit shite, you know. But, I mean, again, I just want some balance to the question.
Do we have any other questions for the proposition? Yes.
I'd just like to ask the proposition how they feel about Boris still being under investigation for breaking parliamentary standards by misleading the House of Commons, and even whilst he's still in the running, potentially to be PM again, he will still have to appear in front of the committee and explain why, as we all know, he lied.
Proposition to respond. Pull yourself together, James. Come on.
I find the big stressor here on the proposition is some more stridently than others, is that none of us were particularly enamored with Boris, and I don't think any of us are saying that Boris was promoting civic virtue or the highest possible standards of public office. What I just made really in line, especially with when the Prime Speaker there is, and I'm a bit older than other people here, but you know, Boris is not where lying came from in politics. You know, I remember I'm old enough when the liar was a thing constantly said. You know, when there was the Chilcot inquiry over liar, that he lied in the House of Commons over whether the government knew or didn't know that there weren't nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And I think the point here is obviously yes, there's a scale to it, but the point is that and to be somewhat rude, I don't think it's really feasible to actually think that the vast majority of politicians are going to be people who are virtuous and are not going to lie. Because as it's been shown throughout history, politicians will say anything to get power. Ours does it more than others, but at the same time, I don't think we can hold into a standard that no other politician really, with any significance, actually is able to hold themselves to.
Opposition to respond.
On that point, I wasn't saying that I don't think lying is a problem in politics. I think what makes Boris Johnson's circumstance unique is the context in which he lied. We are talking about a global pandemic. 200,000 people died. In a context where we need truth more than ever, it was important that the one person in the upper echelons of our parliament told us the truth, and he just didn't. And I think that is why it is so utterly detestable when the rest of us followed the rules and he just lied about it. And that is why I think I'm so passionate about it. But yeah, I think it's more of the context in which he lied than the lying itself, because I do know that is a prominent feature of politics as well.
Opposition question? Yes, state your name for the minutes, please.
Look why. Because we live in a democracy. Anybody you vote for is going to be a horrific criminal, every single one. So, would you rather have, rightly so, a lying, selfish narcissist in charge? Or would you rather have the subjective waif that is Truss, the righteous waif that is Sunak, the Marxist that is Keir, or the anti-Semitic Cornistas?
Can you frame that question in any other way?
Yes, actually can.
In a more respectful way? No.
Yes, please. The filthy commune.
The original question will go to the opposition first.
Your belief is that we should have a monarchy, in which case, so what is your belief?
You can't go back and forth, you can't go back and forth.
That's right, rhetorical, sorry. You don't, at the end of the day, whether or not British politics is kind of a slum of like the worst people that Oxford can kind of produce, that's not really the question for what we're looking at right now. What we're looking at right now is, do we regret getting rid of Boris? No, we don't. So, yeah.
Proposition to respond?
Yes, we do.
Any elaboration on that? No? Grand.
We already know which way the House.
Any abstention questions? Yes.
Both sides of the House has consistently brought up Boris Johnson's sex life. And I ask, should Prime Ministers not have sex?
Any relevant abstention questions?
I consider that valid.
So I'm going to discuss what actually makes this House Regrets motions difficult, which people have been running away from the entire night, and it's really annoyed me. With this House Regrets motions, you typically have to argue for or against a hypothetical situation. Now, what has happened tonight is this side has gone, oh, you know, he was bad, but not that bad. And you guys have gone, oh no, he was bad. Please argue for me why a world in which Boris was deposed is better and or worse than the world that the other person is proposing. Talk about the future, because no one has brought it up and it's annoying me. Then, please describe why... Please describe to me why it would be better for the UK as a whole, and or the Conservative Party itself. Thank you.
opposition.
Yeah, okay, let's go backwards on that. It would be out for the Conservative Party because they wouldn't be down by about 36 points. The polls maybe 5 or 10 points, which is still a defeat, but it's not, Canada 1993 levels of capitalism. Result, one or two people will get that reference in the House. Another point here, I think it's better for the country to have a Prime Minister whose mere existence doesn't cause the pound to nearly fall into parity with the US dollar. Ever happened in my lifetime, bar maybe the Brexit results. I don't think it even happened then. I think the point I was trying to make in my speech is that the reason that it is worse that Boris was deposed was because of what came after him. Liz Truss is basically the walking stereotype of the Conservative Party. Boris, for many faults at least, was trying to do something different, trying to appeal to a different electorate with the Conservative Party. Truss isn't even appealing to her own electorate and has caused our economy to go into shambles, has basically potentially opened up the fact that we might not have a two-party system for about the next 20 to 30 years. Because for all people were saying, I would much rather live in a society where there actually is a competitive elections as opposed to only one party is winning 55% of the vote, is it 19 or something to that level. I think ultimately it's preferable to have, I think it was preferable when Boris was there in small matters like that, as opposed to simply a situation where we have now, where if we don't see anything how government is functioning.
Opposition to respond?
I mean, if we didn't depose Boris, we would still have Boris, and Boris was bad.
You can't go back. We'll go for one more abstention question. Yes.
Just considering the amount of, shall I say, memeability of Boris, from absolutely desecrating a 7-year-old to the lovely, as we like to call them now, blue passports, which I don't know if we're actually getting or not. Anyway, how much of that would either side consider to be an act, and how much of it would they consider to be just him being an absolute buffoon? How much of that do you think was just an act to be like, oh, Boris, we forgive you?
I came to proposition first, I come to the opposition first this time.
I mean, personally, I think it's a character. Boris Johnson is a character, and it is not actually what he's really like. If you look at some of Boris Johnson's old articles, you will see that some of the things he advocated for in Parliament, he was blatantly opposed to about 10-15 years ago. I think Boris Johnson has been able to form a personality cult around himself. And I think the reason why he has done that is because of votes. And there is no other explanation. So in my opinion at least, and I'm not sure if you concur, it's a character. It's all around.
Proposition to respond.
Yeah, I was thinking on that point, it's like, you know what they say, politics is just showbiz for ugly people. They're all being a character, and that was one thing that was positive about him that made him sort of popular, was that he had that persona, which was how he built his brand. And like I said, the point of not really believing in anything, I mean, yeah, it was good that we had a Tory leader do something like the furlough scheme when that was needed. A lot of them would have, if Liz Truss was in charge, she would have just given off into us, the Boris. So I think positives to that, and I don't think, Zelensky, is like a film star, and there's like a lot of that sort of crossover, so I don't think it's unusual.
As a drama student, I take this on very well.
So that's the last question for this evening. Now turn our attention to the vote on speaker ability. Don't I want to have a slide for that. So this is not your personal perspective on the motion. This is which side do you think has spoken best. So if you think the proposition have spoken better at tonight's debate, raise your hand now.
Okay, raise them high and short. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Come on, I've already seen over his head.
How many? Next. If you think the opposition have spoken best in tonight's debate, raise your hand now.
Right, be confident with it, please. 1, 2, 3,
43, 44.
If you are abstaining on tonight, 44. If you are abstaining on tonight's motion, raise your hand now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8. Including Dutch.
8, yeah. Do you have the results?
So there were 17 votes for the prop, 44 votes for the op, and 8 abstentions for the opposition.
So next week's debate is this House will abolish mandatory coalition. If you thought that this week's debate was well timed, next week's debate is also well timed because there is the allegedly going to be an assembly election. The assembly election will be called and announced a day after this is announced. So it's again quite topical. Two more things is, if you're going to the pub, we have a private room in Lavery's. Ellie is outside, so go down and they'll lead down to the pub. Please take any rubbish that you have with you. And also, if you're attending the Stormont Mixer on Tuesday, please sign up before you go, because I can't let you in unless you sign up. Thank you very much, and see you again next week. Any speakers, go down the edge.